Hello and welcome to Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's show, we have a Women's Super League episode for everyone, and we have a special guest on who I consider a WSL expert, women's football journalist, Sophie Lawson. Welcome to the show, Sophie.
Hey, lovely to be here.
Happy to have you on here. We're gonna take a couple deep dives into WSL, but we just want to give a quick reminder to everyone out there. Let y'all know that you can subscribe to us at youtube.com/attacking third. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your shows. And we want to let you know that in honor of WSL joining up with Paramount Plus, we are giving away $100 Paramount Plus gift card to one of our listeners to watch Women's Super League all season long. All you need to do is subscribe to Attacking Third on YouTube, like this video, leave a comment with your social media handle, and we will pick a winner and you'll get $100 Paramount Plus gift card. So subscribe, like the video, and comment with your social media handle to try and win. It's here, or it's about to be here. Women's Super League kicking off very soon. Sophie, I'm so glad you're here with us. Welcome to the show once more. How are things going today across the pond with you?
With me,
Yeah, well,
quite well. I was woken up by a cat this morning. She refused to leave my room. Now we're here. Yeah. Same old.
I love it. You like it. I love it. I'm thrilled to have you joining us here because something that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks or so, or really it just kind of feels like forever ago since we had not actually announced this, but we've just been gearing up for Women's Super League. We're excited to be the home for viewers to watch this league in the United States, and we want to make sure that American audiences here in the States are as equipped as they can be to go ahead and take a dive into Women's Super League soccer. Excuse me, football. Got to make sure that they're equipped to take in Women's Super League football. Let's start with the maybe a little bit of a flashback, right? Let's go back to the future, I suppose. The 2021-2022 campaign for Women's Super League. Who came out on top and who was relegated, who was promoted? Exciting times with a little bit of a shakeup here going into this next season, I believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, you're talking about the last season, and I think for everyone who kind of lived through all the tournaments in July, last season was 12 years ago now.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit hard to remember sometimes, but Chelsea finished top. Last day, I feel like I'm getting this right. Last day of the season, finished a point above Arsenal, so that was fun all the way to the end for the London teams. And Birmingham City went down quite. It felt a bit of an inevitability for Birmingham, unfortunately, as things were kind of moving along as they do in this sort of professionalised world that the Birmingham couldn't quite hold on. But that gives them up for a fun season in the second tier. But in place, we have had Liverpool promoted because we do have promotion and relegation in England, which is something we love to do with our football. And I know that maybe Americans are a little more not so au fait with that, but that's one thing we absolutely love.
I feel like that would have to be like a whole separate episode,
Yeah.
like the
I
well.
personally love the relegation and the promotion of it because it gives chances for new teams to come into the leagues and get a bit of a new look at competition and then perhaps be relegated right back down. But it still gives a bit of movement and rotation. Personally, I really like it. It jazzes up the whole league a bit. So as you mentioned, Sophie, 12 years ago, yes, this last season was about 12 years ago. It's what it feels like for sure. But off-season moves and trades, like are the teams from one season to this season looking pretty identical? What were some of the biggest off-season like player movement that happened in the Super League?
Well, Chelsea and Man City have been particularly busy. They were first and third last season. They are generally there or thereabouts. And yeah, they've both been a little bit busy. Chelsea, in particular, they brought in Kadeisha Buchanan, who I think North Americans will know, a Canadian centre back, has been at Lyon, just solid. They also brought in, Perisse, Ritting-Kennerud, Svitkova, they brought in from West Ham. So they've really tried to, and Kankovic from Rosengård. So they've really added a lot. They've added a lot in terms of attack. Even a player like Perisse, she's going to be doing bits in attack for the team as well. Man City as well, because Man City have lost a good number of players, but they brought in Australian Mary Fowler. They brought in Dana. Everyone knows they're sort of incredible young Venezuelan. Yeah. And they brought in a couple of players from Spain, Laia and Laia, as well as Kirsten Kasperlei, sort of a young Dutch player. So they've again brought in quite a few young players, but some players with a good future. So yeah, everyone's kind of just bulking up in quite a. Everyone's kind of adding the same type of players they've already got. They're not. No one's gone. Wow, we're going to go there. We're going to get there. Thereabouts. Everyone's kind of just adding to what they've got. But my worry for that is we're going to still see sort of, a Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal, Man United, Spurs, Reading, or yada, 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 yada. Very much the sort of standard type of table come the end of the season.
So I want to ask you, with Chelsea bringing in a lot of different players, and I mean, you mentioned a number of other teams, but with Chelsea, you said that there are a lot of the same players. So are you expecting not a lot of change in personnel in terms of their go-to players? Like, do you like all these acquisitions for Chelsea, or is it almost a bit of a deflating balloon because they've already got so many great pieces?
They've really got so many great pieces. The thing about the Chelsea is, I've actually been talking to a lot of coaches in the second tier about this, because there's the impact of Chelsea are trying to win the Champions League. So Chelsea have to beat Lyon, they have to beat Barcelona and all those great other European teams, which means that they've got to be right at the top of their game. But then that impacts the entire WSL, because everyone then has to be able to at least try and compete with Chelsea from top to bottom, whether you're going for the title or just trying to be safe, which then that impacts the second tier. And it's interesting. But look, Chelsea have their eyes on the big prize in UEFA. So I would expect nothing less from this team. But, sometimes it just makes it harder for everyone else, though.
Yeah, I think I know for me, like you mentioned Kadeisha Buchanan, and I was absolutely amped, when they announced the signing, but I'm with you on that. It just sort of feels like, yes, they've got they're going to compete in Super League like they always tend to do, but it does really feel like they have their eyes on a bit of a, maybe considered a bigger prize, right? A bigger slice of the pie when it comes to the European landscape there. I think, I'm talking specifically about Kadeisha Buchanan, but is there any of these particular signings for any of the teams that you are kind of excited to see in action with their new club?
There's been quite a few moves. There's been 140 moves in WSL.
Yeah. But I'm asking you about the one that excites you, the one that excites Lawson.
Oh God, the Rolodex in my brain is just
flipping and flipping right now. I'm also really I'm showing my bias here with defenders, but I heard you went ahead and you mentioned Laetitia, and I'm also excited for this player as well. And I think maybe we're talking about names that folks here in the States might be familiar with. So it's Buchanan and Chelsea, but with Man United, they got head coach Mark Skinner, who had spent some time in NWSL previously. What is it about that signing with Laetitia and Skinner going and acquiring this player that the people should maybe be a little bit excited about?
She's I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. If memory, she was other teams were in for her and have been in for her for a year or two, I think, at this point. Big teams, they see this young, great defender with such a high ceiling. And I think she's exactly, not just in terms of Man United being able to sign a player like Laetitia and saying, you could go somewhere else, you come to us. And I know from Mark Skinner's time with Orlando, there's different feelings about sort of success or not that he had there, but from what English fans have seen from Moxie, and especially when he was back at Birmingham, he's good at developing young players. Maybe, and I don't want to sort of say anything sort of to his detriment here that, oh, don't give him a Marta, don't give him Alex Morgan, but he's great at developing young players, getting the best out of them. So you take a player like Leticia and you give her to a coach who's got a good track record with actually getting the potential out of his players, and that just, you kind of look at where her ceiling is and go, oh, hello. So I think that she's going to be great for United, and they haven't just strengthened in defence. They brought in, like, sort of Lucia Garcia into their attack, but they've also brought in Tonkawa into the defence. So they're kind of all over the pitch and trying to just keep improving year on year, as we kind of saw Casey Stoney set them up initially. Is that incremental growth?
Right on. That's just for off season, like players who came in as signings in the off season, right? So I know your Rolodex is going on right now in your brain, but I'm gonna have you pause that for a second, and maybe let's like speak a little bit on, players who are still with their teams coming back this year in this season, who didn't have to worry about, movement or anything like that. Are there any top players in your opinion who are, still with the same club coming into this season that American audiences should try to get acquainted with early in the season here?
I don't know if you guys have heard of a player. She's not that one. Sam Kerr. I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
Hearing any bells?
Yeah.
Yeah. You might have heard of her. You might remember her.
Yeah, I think that goes. That's one of the ones. I think one of the huge, I think, staple type of players or profile was already pretty elevated. I think when she made the move right to Chelsea and in Women's Super League, and she had already sort of, racked up golden boots and scoring titles, both in United States with NWSL and Women's A League in Australia, and it just sort of felt like that was eventually a move to Europe was going to be the next, kind of challenge for a player like her. But I think more than anything, like watching her make that leap to Super League, I just sort of feel like this is a player who made that leap into sort of obviously has risen to the challenge, and in terms of finding herself playing in a new continent, and against players who play in different styles, or different sort of facing different sort of tactics, right, that maybe she was used to seeing in a place like Australia or in a place like United States. So that goes, I think, without saying, that's obviously you're correct in that's a name that probably some fans of NWSL over here will automatically probably be tuning in to watch. But I'm curious if if it's maybe not so much those with ties to NWSL past, or or semi present, but maybe players who have perhaps kind of made their names in Women's Super League. I think like a big one for me that probably sticks out is maybe Minima. While she's not someone who, maybe there wasn't a lot of waves around her changing teams, but I think there was still like a lot of excitement or a lot of attention. We'll say that's a better word. A lot of attention about, what was going to happen with that player in particular when it comes to, a team like Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of noise around. I mean, a lot of people wanted to sign her when she left Munich, and she's Arsenal are undergoing a bit of a personality shift with Jonas Ideval, their coach. He asked them to play in a very different style than they were used to under Joe Montemurro. So round about the first FA Cup final last season, because we had to because of the pandemic. So as we were hitting winter of last season, Arsenal suddenly just looked an absolute mess. Because they were shifting massively from one style to the next, and they dropped a lot of points, and they got absolutely humiliated in the FA Cup final against Chelsea, because they looked entirely lost, and Chelsea were just very, very good. But so as Arsenal have tried to work out who they are, what we've seen with Mima is she's now playing in so about like the 9.5, not quite a 10, but she's been sort of dropped back from the 9, and she's playing about 9.5 for Fiedeval. And I think that's one of the most successful things he's actually managed to accomplish with Arsenal, because you're seeing all the very best of Viv as an attacker. But she used to play in the 10. She absolutely adores being the creator as well as the goal scorer, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions around her as a sort of lazy or lackadaisical or whatever, but she loves that type of creation that she can do from a little bit further back. So you get to see a lot more of that with Arsenal and her sort of creative side as well as the goal scoring. And then it's then how she works with sort of like a Stina Blackstenius who plays in the 9, or you've got sort of Beth Mead out wide, and how that attack comes together. But I think just watching the Chelsea attack, or watching the Man City attack, or watching the Arsenal attack, all on paper, like all those pieces for each team, just fantastic. And I think you can kind of sit, and I feel like those are sort of your headline teams, your headline matches that you can see. You can kind of watch and just go, they're a bit good.
Yeah, I mean, I think when the Super League schedule came out and looking at some of those marquee matchups, there's definitely a handful to kind of circle. And I do want to ask you which ones you're the most excited for, because when you look at those matchups, and obviously Chelsea being right, like top of the table, they're gunning for it all. They want to win it all. They've got the players and the personnel to do it. Is there a team in the Super League right now, as your like preview prediction, that could challenge Chelsea and could potentially take them down? Because we talked about some of the acquisitions and some of the changes that have been made, some teams strengthening up a little bit. Is there a team that can do it?
Is this the point where I give like all my social media handles so people can like just immediately give me hate when I
people could say, "You idiot! How dare you?"
On paper, any team can be any team. No,
There you go.
I think from watching Man City in the Champions League, and yes, that was right. That was so early in the season, because that's Man City played in the Champions League. They got knocked out of the Champions League when Chelsea were in Portland playing friendlies.
Yeah.
Just to try and contextualize that. And Arsenal trying to find their new personality. I think just the way Chelsea play and the confidence they have, let alone the personality, and it's just the kind of the swagger and the attack, and you get like Harder going, and Kerr and Kirby if she's fit, and it's all kind of like Chelsea at their best is like freeform jazz. Like you don't actually know what instruments you're hearing, but it does sound good. And that's tough for like any or a Man City or an Arsenal, even when they're playing well, is to keep that attack quiet. And like maybe you can score on that team. You can score, but how do you not get scored upon yourselves?
Yeah.
I think that's the problem a lot of teams have, and sometimes it doesn't click for Chelsea. Sometimes someone is definitely playing a trombone backwards or something, and it just doesn't work. But they're a team that just routinely manage to find a goal from somewhere because they've just got that quality in them. So I'm saying, yeah, Chelsea
Sophie,
top.
you're like giving us the keys to football right now. It's how you prevent the other team from scoring. You made it sound so simple, but honestly, I think that's the bottom line when it comes to any football, but especially the Super League, as you mentioned, because there are just top dogs in this league compared to some of the other ones. And I want to ask about Liverpool, who coming into this, their newly promoted team coming back into this tournament and back into the Super League. How are they going to fare? When you look at this, I know you mentioned earlier with all the trades and acquisitions happening and how the lower tier coaches, it hurts them for Chelsea to be acquiring all of these players and just making their roster incredibly deep. When you look at a team like Liverpool, who's newly promoted back into the Super League, what kind of challenges does that pose for them? Like as a team that's now back in this since 2020, what are the biggest challenges they face besides perhaps their schedule markup, 2 matches against Chelsea?
I think it's interesting because what Matt Beard, who NWSL fans might remember from his time with Boston, what Matt Beard did when he kind of took over last season was he built a team that could not just win the championship as they did, and they had this incredible run last season where they finished so far ahead of everyone else because even in those games where they weren't great, they were still finding the goals. to win. Is he built a team that could then compete in WSL. So they haven't actually made many signings themselves this offseason. I think I want to say it's Emma Koivisto, Shanice van der Sanden, and Gilly Flaherty. And Flaherty played under Beard at West Ham. Van der Sanden has played for Liverpool before. Koivisto has just been fantastic when she's played for Brighton in this league. So they haven't done much, but they've tried to just kind of analyse where they need that bit of strength, because they've said they were very good last season. But it's every season the gap between the second and the first tiers gets bigger and bigger, and I don't want to say that any of the players were complacent last year. I think you always play your best, but it can be a little bit of a shock of, oh, okay, wow, okay, this is Chelsea, oh, they're all international, okay, it's going to take a second. So I think it's just any team coming up, it's the acclimation can sometimes take a little bit longer than they're expecting as well.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because, you said we were talking a little bit earlier about the landscape of Super League and those kind of, those usual suspects, right, that you sort of see hanging around the top of the table, and the typical heavy hitters, right, so to speak, in this league. And I hear you talk about that, and it resonates with me. I've felt similarly about NWSL, the last handful of seasons. Quite frankly, I think you can look at just the most past recent season, and sort of say, like, hey, like, these are going to be teams that you're going to see hovering around the top of the table, making a run for things like the Shield or appearances in the playoffs. And you can point out anywhere from 1 to 6 teams, and that was back when it was just about a 4-team playoff or top 4 teams, and now there's expanded playoffs, so now you can still have a handful of teams and seem perhaps like a genius in making picks for teams who might sort of end up in any of those positions. But something that's been happening this year is with the recent expansion, right, from 10 to 12 clubs for NWSL, is maybe perhaps a little bit of leveling of things out, right, in terms of competition. We're seeing an expansion side that has predominantly been within the top 3 throughout the entire season, led by Casey Stoney, right, in San Diego. And they've hovered anywhere from 1st to 3rd place, but have mostly been in 1st throughout their duration of their first, their inaugural season. It's very, very impressive, and it's a storyline that we've all been following and talking about. And you see a team like Kansas City, who was in last place majority of last season, and now they're in the upper half of the table. So it's been kind of a delight to sort of see some of these surprises in the upper half of the table. And I just wonder if, with how Super League kind of came down to that final match day, right, with things sort of settling out, Chelsea still obviously coming out on top, go Blues, but does that maybe set the table a bit for this season? Do you think we might see some more parity a bit? Is that possible?
Okay, let's roll this back. So American sports feel, I mean, this is just my opinion as someone who born and raised lives in England. American sports are kind of built on the idea of parity. So even when you're thinking about how teams are allowed to draft, it's everything in theory, before you start getting into like marquee players and allocation and all that, is supposed to be for parity and evenness. And it's like, and you look at like KC, who are now 12 matches unbeaten, and you look at sort of that rookie class, and you're going, yeah, okay, this team's good. Like if they had Williams and Mewis, if they weren't injured all season, then who knows? And you kind of look at how teams have been built, and there's a lot of intelligence to it, and you know that even if you kind of tank a season, you've got next season, you're already thinking, oh, we can sign that rookie, we could try and do this, that, and the other. Over in Europe, because, and again, I know this sign is slightly changing in the US with like sort of the player association and allocation and drafting and trading and now free agency and all that good stuff. In England or in Europe, it's always about the player having the power. And it's, I want to sign for this team. I want to do this. This team wants to sign me. This team has all the money. They can sign whoever they want. So it works in a very different way, which is why, obviously not just in women's football, but in men's football, you're looking at a Jurgen Klopp team, you're looking at a Pep Guardiola team. There's no sort of surprises there in seeing a Man City, a Liverpool, a Chelsea, whoever at the top end of the table. And we kind of have that same going on in WSL, that yes, these are the teams with the money, and it's not just we can sign this player and give her just a very, very nice paycheck. It's, hey, our facilities are some of the best you'll get in women's football, and this is a player that we will treat well, and we will have this great atmosphere, and we can sign whoever we want because it's so good, and also we're going to win everything, and that's another way of luring players out. Not every team can do that. For a long time, Liverpool were left out in the cold. For instance, they won the title, and they won the title. They were setting the pace, and then Liverpool said, "Yeah, okay, we're done. We're not going to keep investing with," and they ended up getting relegated. They're coming back, so that stuff is starting to change. But that's just for Liverpool. That's for teams that have the money and want to invest. But it's everything, that to lure a player in. And I don't think we'll ever really have that parity in England or in other parts of Europe, because it's the money that does the talking at the end of the day. And that's what we see in men's football. So there might be you might occasionally have like a Leicester City, or you might have kind of changing the guard in Italy, that one season it's Fiorentina, the next it's Juventus, and then it's Juventus for 5 years, but then it's Inter or someone. But it never feels like it's going to be too seismic, especially in a league like WSL, unfortunately. But that being said, there are still great players, and I kind of always want to hammer this home, because a lot of broadcast picks, a lot of media, for one reason or another, will always look at the top end of the table, and that's not necessarily driven by who you think it's driven by, but there's always the look at the top end of the table, the big teams, big players. But there are great players all throughout this league, all throughout loads of different leagues, and sometimes you're thinking, oh, Arsenal, Man City's on, that's gonna be great, but at the same time, like, Brighton are playing Reading, and maybe that will just be like sensational football. So I think you can look anywhere in this league, as long as it's not top versus bottom. I think you can find something fun or something good, but you're not necessarily going to have parity.
Right.
That's very interesting. I love that you brought it back to NWSL, especially for some of our listeners, so they could connect that to a team like Kansas City that does have a good roster, and maybe this year isn't their year, but next year they've got the future. Thank you. That was very, very insightful. I appreciate it, Sophie. I want to ask you about your team, and I know that you're a journalist, and you've got like middle of the road, can't do it. I want to know from you, who is your team that you like to watch? It really gets you jazzed up for women's football, or a particular player that you're like, this is my go-to. I just love this. I love when I get to watch this game and this player.
And why is it going to be a Spanish player?
There's not enough of them. There's not enough of them over here. I don't have a WSL team. The men's team I support are nowhere near the top of women's football, and yeah, so then neither the women's or the men's team, they're just bad.
So we know you don't pick the front runners, so that's good. That's a good baseline to understand. But for me in the NWSL, I don't have a geographical team near me, so that's like out of it for me. Whereas like Sandra, she lives in Chicago. She's got the Red Stars. She goes to the games. Like she has a little bit more influence and more, I don't know, power to them. Like she knows them a little bit better. She wants them to win. Like she's got a little heartstring pulled for Chicago.
Yeah, shy till I die.
I mean, I live in London, so I used to have loads of, before Spurs moved away from the Hive. That was my local team, talking about liking teams that aren't that hurt. Boy, a go-to player. There's it depends what position you're talking. Like, so if people who follow me online might be aware that I generally stay up to very strange hours of the night watching not just NWSL, but say the WE League, which is in Japan. It's the Japanese Women's League.
I actually was not sure what time zone you were on before we jumped on this call, because you do not sleep ever. I was like, where in the world is Sophie located? Because she's tweeting at all hours of the night.
I'm located inside a giant orange.
Yeah. Yeah. native to London, I hear. You can find a plethora of orange trees.
Yeah, there's. I mean, at one point Arsenal was half Dutch, so and
Yeah,
they were quite near. So I think
there
maybe
you
that.
go.
But no, yeah, I like watching football.
Period.
And I have sort of insomniac tendencies. Yes, no, I am GMT. But yeah, so try and stay awake for sort of Japanese football or NWS or any like sort of West Coast evening kickoffs. I absolutely hate, and I've done it where I've gone to a match in England, stayed up, watched a West Coast kickoff, and then gone to another match in England, and it's very unpleasant. Um,
Hardest working
yeah.
women's
It's not.
football right
It's
now.
just watching football. Like I don't actually write about it. I just watch it. I'm exceptionally lazy. Um, so to swing it around, I was actually going to say someone like Yui Hasegawa or Mane Iwabuchi, but say because Arsenal are changing a little bit, Iwabuchi can't sort of do what she might do, say for Japan, which is a bit of a shame for someone like me who just enjoys that type of football. But those are kind of like those type of like technically gifted midfielders are going to do something ridiculous because they're so deft with the ball. Those are my types of players I like to watch, and then they're everywhere now. So
They are everywhere now. That's delightful for all of us, quite frankly, to be able to witness them playing across all sorts of different clubs. And look, Sophie, I'm so glad that you have your handle on here, so that folks can tell you when you're incorrect about what I'm going to ask. But
I'm wrong all the time.
when we're looking at this season ahead of us for the next campaign for Women's Super League, who do you think is going to walk away with the whole bag, and who do you think is going to be the dark horse, who's going to maybe make some noise, and why is it going to be Tottenham?
Um, I think it's Chelsea again. Frankly, I think Man City, you've got some great players, and they've got the players to make a run for it as well. But I'm not sold the those players know how to play together yet, and that will take time. And sometimes you have to get halfway into a season before you get that cohesion. So I don't think City can challenge. I'm not sold on Arsenal, and I think I just prefer, again, like I say, I like the sort of the technical players, so I kind of prefer that Arsenal for those kind of the Montemurro Arsenal rather than Edeval Arsenal, which then kind of reduces your field. So it feels like it's going to be Chelsea again because it's a day that ends in Y. It's a year that ends in pandemic. It's Chelsea.
Yeah.
And yeah. So the problem is last season we said Everton. Well, a lot of people said Everton for the dark horses, and they ended up just avoiding relegation. So if we say it's going to be Spurs, then they will get relegated. And
Are we that powerful, mate? Come on.
the jinx is strong. My sister's a Spurs fan. I don't need that heat that close to my door. But no, I think Spurs have made some great off-season acquisitions. They were going so strong last season, and they started to wobble. I like the coaching setup with who they've got. I don't think they're a team that are really flash and like, oh my god, but they just they get it done, and they're every match it feels like they not necessarily get a little bit better, but they get a little bit smarter in what they should be doing. And like I say, some interesting parts and interesting players they've signed. The team is very different from the one that got promoted a few years ago, in terms of personnel on and off the pitch. But yes, dark horses, Spurs, and when they get relegated, I will I'll bake a cake to apologise
boy.
to the
Oh
Lilies.
boy. I hope not. I hope that it's the pick, and I hope that it's not the kiss of death, and I hope that they actually do cause some trouble in Super League. Enjoyed watching them a bit when I was able to during last season, and to sort of see them on the outside looking in there, right in the mid table was it sort of left me wanting more, basically. So I'm with you. I think the Blues got the target on the back, right, and everyone will be gunning for them, and they'll also keep chasing titles. But I hope that we're correct for Spurs here. But that's it for today from us, Sophies. I want to thank you so much for joining us today on Attacking Third and chatting all things Women's Super League. Hope it wasn't too painful for you. Hope it wasn't too painful for the listeners. Started dipping their toes into the waters for the first time, perhaps in Women's Super League. So thanks everybody for joining us on the show. We just want to remind you before we close out that you can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at Attacking Third. And please, please, please don't forget that you can win a $100 Paramount Plus gift card. Subscribe to us on YouTube, like this video, and drop your social media handle in the comments for a chance to win. For Sandra, Herrera, Lisa Roman, and Sophie Lawson, this was Attacking Third.